Today on the report, a new study shows how mortality surged for renters facing eviction during COVID-19.
And Capital One is buying out Discover for $35 billion.
Plus, Senator Rick Scott calls on Vice President Kamala Harris to preside over the impeachment trial of the Secretary of Homeland Security.
And in Haiti, the criminal indictments of several persons linked with a presidential assassination. It's all coming up on the report.
Hello, I'm Jasmine Alvarez.
I'm Kemdi Wosu.
I'm Justin Rosette.
And I'm Noah Sakadas. Thanks for tuning into The Report. Don't forget to follow us on X at The Report CSUF and on our Titan TV Instagram at Titan TV CSUF to keep in touch with us and view our latest content.
Housing instability will always carry deadly risks, and these vulnerabilities have been exacerbated for many during the COVID-19 pandemic. A study recently published in JAMA revealed that during the first 2 years of the pandemic, the mortality rate amongst renters who faced eviction were twice as high, greater than expected. The general population also experienced excess mortality during this time, but the risk started higher for renters and rose exponentially for those threatened with eviction. From January 2020 to August 2021, the risk of death for renters facing eviction was 2.6 times greater than the general population. During the baseline period from 2010 to 2016, the mortality rate was 1.4 times higher for renters facing eviction than it was for the general population. Nick Grates, a researcher at Princeton University's Eviction Lab and lead author of the study, said, quote, "The pandemic has really highlighted how housing is so critical to health and public health. That all became really clear and salient during a pandemic where there was this massive infectious disease risk. But this deep connection between housing and health, it's not new. It's not going to disappear if COVID numbers come down," end quote. This new study is the third in the latest series of work from a collaboration between the Eviction Lab and the U.S. Census Bureau, which aims to fill in gaps in understanding about who faces eviction in the U.S. and what the impacts are. Work published in October last year showed that about 7.6 million people are threatened with eviction each year, and risks are higher for households with children and African American renters. So what do you guys make of more and more people passing away and dying during the pandemic, especially renters this is affecting? Do you guys have any thoughts on it? What are your thoughts?
I mean, stress has definitely got to be a factor. And I know that I looked up that the median age of people suffering from this kind of crisis right now are in their 30s, which is kind of indicative of the high stress because, older people, they really don't have to worry about renting stuff like that because they basically own their homes at this point. But people our age, slightly older, millennials and such, they're still renting. And that's got to be an issue, especially just when nowadays we have to have multiple jobs, multiple either part-time or full-time jobs just to rely on something to pay the bills. And you've got to have multiple roommates, stuff like that, partners. And I'm sure the whole thing wasn't made any easier when COVID happened because, everyone's out of work and only certain jobs are actually going in person. So there might be people being let go all the time. And then you have unemployment, which obviously isn't enough to pay the bills.
Right. And you bring up a good point about it very likely being stress. And because it was during the pandemic era, it does make me question about lifestyle, right? We don't know the causes according to the data that was provided for the study. There was no data provided for what the causes of death were. But I mean, you bring up stress. It's a good point. During the pandemic, gyms were closed. A lot of these things that at least could help us have a healthier lifestyle, perhaps if it had to do with lifestyle, were closed at the time. So it is tough on how can you prevent it, right? What about Noah? What do you think, and Justin?
I think there's a multitude of factors that are being taken into account. You have to take into consideration the high cost of living on the West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington. You have these politicians that are essentially inflating these massive budgets into projects that don't exactly benefit the residents of the states as much as they do non-residents. For example, we have these huge packages going towards illegal immigrant housing right now, and these packages are inflating the economy incredibly and causing the rent to go up innumerably high for local residents. And this is causing a really bad problem where we have kids our age that are not able to afford housing, and they're trying to rent as much as they can. The homeless situation in the big cities is on the rise. Drug use is increasing. It's just a really bad situation for the West Coast. And it's just, we have to do something about this because it's only going to get worse if somebody doesn't speak up about it.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, lifestyle-wise, the pandemic was a really tough time for a lot of people. Like, a lot of stuff that people could do regularly, they couldn't do anymore. Yeah. And so overall, I think, like you said, it's interesting how stress from housing could directly lead to like higher rates of death. And I think the study said that stress is known to increase rates of cancer, heart disease, strokes, and things like that. So a lot of, especially college students, people that are graduating that were trying to find housing during times after the pandemic, maybe couldn't work anymore, like Kemdi said, and we're struggling to find that. So I think that's an interesting correlation how, especially for people in like their 30s that you would think maybe would have more sort of stable jobs. But overall stress is, I think, especially with other things as well, like people that have kids and maybe weren't able to have people watch their kids and things like that is interesting as well.
Right. What's clear is that it is certainly affecting the younger population. It's affecting people who have chronic stress, perhaps people with lower income as well. Do you guys think that there's any possible solution for this eviction crisis that's been going on, and any solutions that you guys can brainstorm or think of?
Lower living costs in California, because California's awful. Los Angeles, trying to find a place under $2,000 a month. And then you have to also think about, water, electricity, gas, Wi-Fi, Netflix. It's just it's just a bad situation all around, and I do not see it getting any better.
Right.
That's like hopefully it will at some point.
And one of the biggest deals of the year thus far, Capital One is acquiring Discover Financial Services for $35.3 billion in an all-stock deal, giving the bank a leg up in the competitive credit card market. Under the terms of the deal, which was announced late on Monday, Discover shareholders will receive a little over 1 share of Capital One for every Discover share they own. That represents an almost 27% premium from Discover's closing share price of $110.49 on Friday. If the deal is finalized, current Capital One shareholders will own a 60% stake in the combined company, while Discover shareholders will own the remaining 40%. Capital One has stated to expect to close the deal in late 2024 or early 2025. Getting Discover, which issues its own credit cards, under the same roof as Capital One would give the bank a major leg up against competing credit card issuing banks such as JP Morgan, Chase, Bank of America, and Citigroup. Richard Fairbank, the founder and CEO of Capital One, said in the Monday announcement that the deal would, quote, build a payments network that could compete with the largest payments networks and payments companies, end quote. A marriage between Capital One and Discover, if approved by regulators, would also give Capital One a new source of revenue from the merchant fees it collects. So my question for you guys is, if the deal is to go through and they purchase Discover, what does this mean for the banking and credit card industry and also for the consumers?
Well, it's kind of scary to think about because there's no competition then. The best thing about having all these different credit card companies and these different banks is that you have like competition and one's always trying to outshine the other. So they along the way, they do these deals, 0% interest, APR, stuff like that, financing, loans, stuff like that, just to ways to incentivize the customer to choose their credit card company or their bank. But if they don't have that, then they all just merge into one or two banks. Then it's oh, do I want this one or this one? And it's they're not incentivized to help the little guy anymore. Right. There's no reason for them to.
Exactly.
As a average consumer, you have less options. You have ultimately one sole option. Obviously, we have more choices right now at the moment, but what this will lead to ultimately, or what this could lead to, is potentially all of the large companies merging into one where there is only one choice, and that is this option. And Obviously, that's not good. Obviously, that's a monopoly on the credit card industry. And if there's a potential future where we could see the government essentially nationalizing that industry, that's on the step to dictatorship right there. We already see that happening in other businesses as well, where we see companies donating large amounts of donation funds in order to politicians to get them elected. What's to say that they don't have their hand in the credit card industry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you guys both bring up good points about it affecting the consumer's ability to choose, right? And you bring up such a good point, Kemdi, about not having, it doesn't give us anything to entice us with, right? Like they're not going to be able to, it's less competition. So we all honestly have less to choose from. We're not going to have as many. And I'm really scared. Now that you bring it up, I'm scared, Noah, that that's kind of where we're headed, where we might be headed towards just one company that's going to be in charge of all credit, and really that's going to be the only option for us as Americans, which is scary. And it is scary that they have such a big hand in being able to decide, okay, this is what's going to be the only choice for all of consumers. And it affects all of us. It truly does.
Yeah, and playing off your guys' point, Capital One last year was the 4th biggest credit card union, and Discover was the 6th, so you have 2 of like the top 7 biggest credit card companies combining. And so it's like, it is scary for people that use those. It's kind of like if they were to mark up prices now, they really don't have a choice.
Right. And it does make me wonder, for people who are Discover users, what does that mean for them? You know, are they going to have a difference in their interest rates now? What about their credit cards? Are they going to want to still bank with Capital? I mean, it really, it's all up in the air. Yeah.
What's in their wallet, indeed?
Yeah.
What's in your wallet?
It's in the air.
Yeah.
Rick Scott, a Republican senator for the state of Florida, is calling on Vice President Kamala Harris to fulfill her constitutional duty by presiding over the upcoming Senate impeachment trial for Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Last week, the House voted to impeach Mayorkas 214 to 213. The next phase is a trial in the Senate, where the Democratic-led chamber is expected to quickly dispose of the case and exonerate Mayorkas. Chuck Schumer, the Democratic Senate Majority Leader from New York, said in a statement last week, Patty Murray, the Democrat Senate President pro tempore from Washington State, would preside over the trial. However, Rick Scott recently sent Vice President Kamala Harris a letter calling on her to perform her duties. He wrote, quote, "As Vice President, the Constitution directs that you also serve as the presiding officer of the U.S. Senate. Although Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has publicly stated that he intends for the President pro tempore Patty Murray to preside over the upcoming impeachment trial of Secretary Mayorkas, I write to encourage and invite you to fulfill your constitutional duty as the presiding officer of Secretary Mayorkas' impeachment trial," end quote. Secretary Mayorkas was impeached by House Republicans on 2 charges of willful and systematic refusal to comply with the law regarding immigration and border security, and for breach of public trust regarding the state of the southern border. No House Democrats voted to impeach, and 3 Republicans voted against. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, assigned 11 impeachment managers to present the case before the Senate. The House is expected to deliver the charges on February 28th. Now, what are your opinions on this? Do you agree, disagree with the charges against Secretary Mayorkas?
I do agree. I think this guy has been lying to the American people for some time now. He claims on multiple news stations that the border is secure, that we know who's coming in. These people are not being vetted at all. And if you go onto YouTube or any news story about the situation at the southern border, you can clearly see that they're just letting people in. And it's in the tens of thousands. I don't have that number on me at the moment, but the situation down there is really bad. And this guy has been lying for some time about the situation. And House Republicans are not shy to call him out on that.
I actually did a little research also. Apparently the numbers of people going in right now are the highest they've been since 2000. So that's pretty big. So
yeah, to back up your point, 225,000 migrants were at the border in December, which is the highest since 2000. So I think with a lot of these numbers, and also like you said, just going on newscasts and looking at things, I think it's fair to raise these charges against them.
Yeah. I agree as well. And it's a good point that you guys that Noah brought up. They're not being vetted. We don't know who's coming in. And unfortunately, we're also seeing a lot more in the news that migrants are attacking other U.S. citizens.
That's
They're
right, yeah.
attacking as well our law enforcement. And, you know, these people, they come with their own traumas, their own baggage from their countries. Perhaps they couldn't trust law enforcement in their home countries. However, this does not mean that they can come in here expecting it to be the same way as it was, which is why we need to make sure that they're taking in proper precautions when letting in immigrants into this country. And unfortunately, they didn't do that. That's why I think these charges are valid. They do need to persecute because, unfortunately, they are putting the American public at risk.
Unfortunately, this is also the Secretary of Homeland Security. This is the people that we trust in order to keep us safe as Americans. And whenever they go up and ask him, when they bring a hearing toward this guy, when anybody ever asks him a question, he gives an indirect answer, which is pretty commonplace with people who are incompetent in their position. They give an indirect answer. They don't know exactly what the answer is, so they're going to sway the conversation away from something that they do understand, that they can talk about, so they can control the situation. I think, frankly, he's a coward, and I'm kind of on the side that he should be thrown in jail for this.
And then back to the topic of the trial, do you think that Kamala Harris should be involved in the trial whatsoever, or do you think...
I mean, it's her job, isn't it? Her as vice president. I think it's a bit funny that Chuck Schumer is kind of like egging her to do her job as vice president and oversee the trial. That's a bit silly to me, but you know, it is what it is. You know, the Biden administration, obviously, everyone has kind of had their own issues with it. We're just going to have to see what happens. In Haiti, a judge responsible for investigating the 2021 assassination of President Jovenel Moïse has indicted his widow, Martine Moïse, ex-Prime Minister Claude Joseph, the former Chief of National Police Leon Charles, and several others, according to a report obtained on Monday. The indictments are expected to further destabilize Haiti as the country struggles with an increasing surge in gang violence and recovers from a spat of aggressive riots, demanding the resignation of current Prime Minister Ariel Henry. Dozens of suspects have been indicted in the 122-page report issued by Walter Wesser Voltaire, the fifth judge to lead the investigation in the aftermath of previous judges overseeing the case, stepping down for various reasons, including fear of death. Leon Charles, the police chief when Moïse was assassinated, and who now serves as Haiti's permanent representative to the Organization of the American States, faces the most serious charges: murder, attempted murder, possession of and illegal carrying of weapons, conspiracy against the internal security of the state, and criminal association. Meanwhile, Claude Joseph and Martine Moïse, who were injured in the attack, are accused of complicity and criminal association. Representative Charles could not be reached for a comment, and Moïse's attorney has not returned any messages. However, ex-Prime Minister Claude Joseph has shared a statement with the Associated Press, accusing Ariel Henry of undermining the investigation and benefiting from the president's death, stating, quote, "Henry is weaponizing the Haitian justice system, prosecuting political opponents like me. It's a classic coup d'etat. They failed to kill me and Martine Moïse on July 7, 2021. Now they are using the Haitian justice system to advance their Machiavellian agenda," end quote. The former prime minister has again called on Ariel Henry to resign, noting that while he was still prime minister, he had invited the FBI to help local authorities investigate the killing and wrote the U.S. and OAS for help, stating, quote, "I won't stop my fight. Justice will be served," end quote. Were Martine, Joseph, and Charles actually involved in President Jovenel's assassination, do you guys think?
It sounds like an amazing story. Not saying that I don't believe it. I'm just saying this is like a huge political overtaking, and I'm not sure exactly who to believe. I'm not familiar, particularly before this story, with the ins and outs of the Haitian government. I wasn't even aware there was an assassination, but I just find this story so interesting, and it sounds like something that could happen. So I'm not ruling it out altogether. So.
Do we believe Joseph, then, when he says it was a setup by Prime Minister Henry, potentially?
I think first is very unfortunate for Haiti, just as a country who's already going through a lot with the riots, like you said, and gang violence, and now to be dealing with this. And it's so serious to the point where they're on the fifth judge because 4 other judges left out of fear of dying.
Right.
I think, like you said, it's definitely an interesting story. I think overall, if they were to have been a part of killing the president, this would be his denying it and saying they tried to kill him and the widow instead. But overall, I think it's interesting, and I think it'll be interesting to see how the trial plays out.
Yeah, I agree. I think looking at the facts of the case so far that they've provided, it does seem like it is possible that they did commit the crime. But it also seems incredible. So I don't know. It is interesting, like you said. We're gonna have to wait and see which judge will officially be the one ruling over it and deciding, because it is scary. I wouldn't want to be the judge either. So
Yeah.
And that's all we have time for today.
Thank you to everyone for tuning in.
Be sure to stay tuned for the latest in world news and different views.
we hope to see you all next time on The Report.